She's all of a sudden very similar. There's one behind.
All right. Hello, everybody.
You like that?
Welcome to Barn. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. I wanted to get things started and just say that I'm thrilled to have this event here, to have Michele and Kathryn here, and to have all of you join us tonight. The first thing that people often remark on when they come to Barn is the facility and the equipment, and that's great, and I love the place, but the people are what really hold you when you come here. The people are what keep me excited, coming back all the time, and I couldn't be happier to have a room full of folks for tonight's Open Mic. Thank you all very much for coming. I won't take a long time. I'm going to introduce Michele. Michele Bombardier is Bainbridge Island's first poet laureate. She holds an MFA from Pacific University. She's a Hedge Book and Mineral School Fellow and is the founder of the humanitarian effort Fishplate Poetry, which offers workshops, editing, and retreats. I also want to say that the folks who are familiar, I recognize many of you, you'll know this, new folks may not know this. We do a lot of teaching here at Barn, and we have a poetry workshop coming up on Saturday. I think Anne will be teaching that. Hi, Anne. If you are interested in poetry or inspired by tonight's events, track down Anne or find out details online. We have a few spots available. So with that, I'd love to welcome Michele to the stage.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is just the best. I have been wanting to do this for such a long time, to have a reading series and a regular open mic series, and have a chance for us all to gather as a community under the umbrella of poetry. And this is a dream come true. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Barn. You guys have been absolutely wonderful to work with. And I want to thank the people in the Poet Laureate committee. You guys raise your hands and thank these people because they've been we have two the city council people here, both are poetry lovers, Clarence and John. Thank you for being here. What's that?
I'm not sure why.
Yeah, no. Okay, we have to fix that.
How's that?
Voila. All right. I'm not going to repeat all that, but you get the gist. Oh, I'm so happy. So we are here today to celebrate poetry. And what is poetry? Poetry is an echo asking a shadow to dance, said Carl Sandburg. In other words, don't ask a poet. The words under the words. Let's go with that. So tonight is the launch of our Reading and Open Mic series. Mark your calendars. Every third Thursday, for who knows how long, we're going to gather. And we have a wonderful lineup of poets coming in from the whole general greater Puget Sound area to come in to be the feature. And featured poets will have their books for sale, and Kathryn will have her books for sale, and support your poets, which is code for buy their books. Yep. And non-poets, thank you for being here. Come and show poets love. Tonight, our feature is Kathryn Smith, who is the current artist in residence at Bloedel. We are thrilled to have her here to be our feature for this kickoff night. Kathryn will read, and then we will have our open mic, which I will MC. We'll have a short break in the middle, and then and then we will resume, and then keep going. So, so right now I'm going to introduce Kathryn. Kathryn Smith's poetry is deeply rooted in the natural world, often wrestling with human relationship to the environment and examining what it means to live in this precarious anthropocene moment. Kathryn's most recent poetry collection, Self-Portrait with Cephalopod, was a finalist for the 2022 Washington State Book Award. She grew up on Washington's Olympic Peninsula and currently lives in Spokane. She is the Bloedel Creative Residence for January, and she's currently working on her next book. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you to Barn. What a wonderful space to have. I'm a little jealous that I live so far away. And I want to say thank you to the folks at Bloedel for having me here during this lovely, beautiful, quiet, winter, damp, mossy season. So I'm going to read a few poems from Self-Portrait with Cephalopod, which came out about 2 years ago. And then I'm going to read a few poems from the manuscript that I've been working on while I've been here. And as Michelle said, I grew up on the Olympic Peninsula, mostly in Port Angeles. And so even though I've lived in Spokane for about 20 years, I feel like the coastal landscape, because it's the landscape of my childhood, it really is kind of what feeds my soul and therefore feeds my poetry. So it comes up a lot in this book. So I'm going to draw on that landscape quite a bit. Meditation among the fragments. Some mornings pray themselves open. I skirt the shoreline, weaving with the tide, my pockets heavy with rocks and shells. Ancient litter, evidence of a life lived at the edges of things. Some pieces are only ever broken, bone pores gridded with mica, wave-smoothed rift and algal stain. This sand dollar fragment chips from its star whorl, vulnerable there, where beauty meets function meets beauty. I press a hand against my own center, feel the seam where waves could crack me. In such a vast, calcifying tumbler, who could keep what's necessary? I let silt and silver wash through my foothold, finger the grit, let the tide, as it will, draw in. Self-Portrait with Cephalopod and Digitalis purpurea. Sometimes a girl doesn't need a reason to place a foxglove blossom on her tongue. It's enough to like the idea that the heart could stop because of flowers. It's that, or be crushed, like ichthyosaurus in a kraken's grasp, by my own sadness, fossilized in unnatural linear patterns, finally measured by the geometry of loss. I don't need another reason to fear the ocean. I already know it could swallow me from the inside if I tried to breathe it in. Everything beautiful is dangerous. And attempting beauty is a risk. Like the dress my mom's friend made me for the 8th grade dance. So often things don't hang together the way I imagine. That seafoam bow over my pale, scant breasts looked nothing like the pattern promised. It made my head hurt, knowing how little meets our expectations. So I refused the last dance and my date left without me. He spent the next 4 years pretending I wasn't there, my shadow scuttling the halls of the high school beside him. Sometimes a girl doesn't need a reason to want to disappear behind the unseen framework of collarbones. I think mine would look lovely in a cephalopod's garden, after she had spit away the sateen straps. Have you ever wondered what's beneath the skin, working? I know so little, I wouldn't recognize my own heart if I saw it outside my body. I wouldn't know my own bones, arranged in an ocean bed, an octopus, coaxing them to root in the sea floor until their stalks grew thick with mouth-like blooms. I dropped some of my poems, and they went directly under the podium. Thank you. If everything went perfectly smoothly, something would be wrong. This next poem came about through a poetry workshop that I took at a creative space in Spokane that's not exactly like Barn, but similar in some ways. And the theme of the workshop was unloved animals. And the idea was each participant got an animal, and there was one animal for each letter of the alphabet. So I got the letter V, and my animal was the vulture. And this draws on some Eastern Washington landscape. It draws on a trip I took to a place called Steptoe Butte in the Palouse. The young eat what these birds disgorge from their crops. Old world vultures track their prey by vision. New world vultures smell the dead a mile away, drawn to decay. Oh, to be so unambiguously guided. I want to lie down in the battlefield and be scavenged. My mother wants to know who fought the battle. She's from the old world. We drive a corkscrew road while vultures churn the sky. History repeats itself. I keep waiting for the world to turn around. From atop the butte, we see every direction, miles of acres of non-native wheat. The old world sighs. Well, we lost the battle. I hem and mumble, paw and lie. The new world spreads its new world wings. I zip my coat against a wind that whistles through vulture feathers, alerts the wake to feeding time. History defeats itself. I want the sky to stutter above me, spitting down its gawk and cry. Different species of vulture eat different parts of the carcass, some dropping bones from high above, exposing the marrow of what's killed by something else. Without decomposers, the dead would clutter the earth. Vultures circle, necklacing our errors. I want the descent, the swoop and pluck, clear to my sharp and nationless bones. The earth turns, or it doesn't. We spiral back down, and the vultures overhead wait for something to die. I might have given a content warning for dead animals. There's a lot of them. This next poem is called When I Stepped on the Mouths of Other Creatures, I Did Not Apologize. And I'm referring to the experience of going out at low tide and walking out on the rocks, and you're stepping on rocks, but you're stepping on mussels, you're stepping on anemones. When I stepped on the mouths of other creatures, I did not apologize. Here, the world strips itself to kelp, teeming with flies. It comforts me, knowing gulls will pry a locked shell until it gives. I found a barnacle latched inside a barnacle's mouth, fastened to its own kind. I took it home, cradled in tissue for the journey, then startled at the sea stench when I unwrapped it. I'm a blood cage, the sort of creature who looks for God when I feel my brain spin out from my body. I think there's a tree leafing out in my throat. I never considered what the end of my life would be like, my grandmother said, as I wheeled her down the corridor. I consider it constantly. In every cliff where roots strained to hang on, every chamber spiraled with sand. First the snail died, then the crab. I offer my finger to the anemone's blind suckle. I can't feed anything. The tide carries its living and its dead together, lets the shore reveal and retreat. When does the body become distinct from the mind? We know the exoskeletal breaks. Clog of leaves, that word corridor, so much worse than hallway. Passage, permanence, forsake, forsaken. We blame the ocean, whether or not the ocean is to blame. Salt-washed pictograph just beyond the abandoned bunker. Oh wait. Okay. Salt-washed pictograph just beyond the abandoned bunker. To peel the bark of madrona to its pith. To drive a road grown mossy between tire tracks. To know a place by its guardrails and where they're fractured, its bridges and those who've jumped. I've grown from these things, then toward them. My ancestors were first to clear-cut these forests, and I must claim this as my history, the way I claim, what? Loneliness? The violence of species against species? And oil rigs midnight vanishing. Blank harbor. A seagull drops its thieved muscle again and again to crack it open. I claim this exposed meat. These kelp heads, bobbing at the high tide, look almost animal, an orderly procession of sea lions. Peel the bark from red to pale. A person could, if a person wanted to. A person could reach the deepest part. So I'm going to read just a few poems that are a little newer, and these are from a manuscript that's currently in progress. I'm still writing about the natural world and about being a human on a dying planet and dealing with the grief and guilt that comes with that. I'm also exploring interior landscapes a little more, I think. Personal interior. This poem, the title is a reference to a Sunday school song, which you may or may not be familiar with. I've got the joy, 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 joy. Among the lies I told in childhood, that joy resided within me, quadruple deep and undislodgeable. From the beginning, a gully carved itself through my metaphorical heart, steepening, impassable. A leap across would leave you ankle-wrenched and scroll-welted, skin a sear of superficial red. Behind my grandmother's house, no fence, no sign, no indication of boundaries or what the rules were. My sister and I would clamber to the heart of the gully, rise mud-smeared to the backyard with its Gravenstein tree, each apple holding a predictable worm. It wasn't a lie if I didn't know the truth yet. Couldn't know what lived way down in the depths of my heart. Leaves and limbs clogged any sign of the stagnant creek. No magic healing waters. No otherworldly passage. No lasting scars. Just an ache in our hands from the cold grip required to pull ourselves earthward, grasping at branches that did not look strong enough to hold us. I think I'll just do one more. This book is also this new collection that is not yet a book, which hopefully will someday be a book, is also, I'm in conversation a little bit with some of my poetic ancestors, and in particular Emily Dickinson. So there are a few poems that include references to Emily Dickinson, including this one. And this one was also inspired by a visit to the taxidermy museum on the campus campus of Washington State University in Pullman. If you ever have a chance to go there, I recommend it, if that's your thing. Emily says the heart has many doors. So I opened the one marked museum, found myself face to face with a field of dead deer. Of all the pelts I touched, the skunk's was softest. Softer than the square of brown bear. Softer than the river otter, bereft of its disastrous teeth. I could have sworn a bird flitted from one branch to another, but it was just my lone reflection in the display case. I saw 2 magpies that day, one pecking at pavement for edible scraps as I watched through the diner window, scraping mayonnaise from my vegetable sandwich. The other perched in an avian tableau. I looked it in the eye, which is what the YouTube videos say to do to avoid attack. If magpies are among the animals that recognize their reflections, would they know their kind through museum glass? The heart has many doors, but few windows. I pressed to the knothole, ears pulsing with white noise buzz. I studied every specimen in that wilderness of preserved beasts, as though I've never crouched on a trail, arms flung to shield my head from a puffed grouse protecting her chicks. I looked every dangerous thing in the teeth. The wolverine, the cougar, the bear, so like the one that once rose to meet me at the edge of a river. It was so long ago, I had almost forgotten how every door in my heart flew open in that moment. "You're beautiful," I shouted over and over. It's the first time I remember wanting to be alive. Thank you so much.
I looked every dangerous thing in the teeth. Every door in my heart flew open. Thank you so much. I'm in awe of the tenderness and curiosity that you see the world. Thank you so much. And now we're going to do the open mic. And I'm going to tell you how we're going to do this. Each poet will have up to 4 minutes. And less is a lovely thing. You don't have to fill it. If you just have one poem, that is a thing of beauty. It is a-okay. Don't go over. I will be sitting right here, and when there's 1 minute left, I will be going like this. And when there's 10 seconds left, I will be going like this. And then there will be the chime of shame. Which means you have about 3 seconds to finish that line. We have a full docket, which is an absolute wonderful thing. And audience, you get to make noise. This is not church. You get to murmur, you get to laugh, you get to do this, you get to whatever, you get to respond. It's a-okay. And I'm going to be the first pancake and read a few poems. There are 2 people in the audience here that are sitting right there that I wasn't going to read this poem, but the first poem in my book is about when I almost set Virginia Mason Hospital on fire. And the woman right there, Terry, raise your hand. It's right there. She's my, it's a true story, and she's the one in this poem. So we almost set Virginia Mason Hospital on fire. Oh, I'm sorry. Nothing leaves this room. You're in a seat. She's a boss lady now at the hospital. Fireball of sin on a house of prayer. We didn't mean to set the hospital on fire. Just our sins, done and undoable, written on slips of paper, ignited, then dropped out the upper story window. We'd lean out, watch the ash float away. But our list grew, requiring more paper. So instead of an ash butterfly, a fireball of sin tinged with sorrow smoldered on the roof of the trauma unit under us. Frantic, we poured our cups of cold coffee, contents of our hospital insignia water bottles, dousing the sizzling remnants above the heads of those staring up at the ceiling below. And now I'm going to read a poem called What the Arborist Hears, Cephalopod Indian Reservation, and it's for my son Evan Bombardier, who's an arborist on here. The trees are battleship gray to my colorblind son. The winter sky, same as summer to him, only darker, more viscous. He feels how the air holds clouds we can't yet see, how near the rain is, how many more hours he has to belay than repel himself from the cathedral height of the cedars and firs before dark closes in and the trees pull into the winter sky. Like a jockey or long-distance runner, being small and strong is esteemed for a climber. He needs to be able to hold on, endure. He says if there's one thing he's learned is to ask the tree for permission first, before the throw of line held and secured, before the grip and embrace, the pull up and into the canopy, that foreign land. He says the birds announce his arrival there. He has learned warning from welcome. Only when a tree has to come down does he wear his spurs. Even then, he regrets the tearing. The birds, he says, have a different song around spurs. And the time he had to take down the dying old cedar known as grandfather, they were silent. He asked the old cedar before he made the first cut, waited until the oldest person on the ground gave him the nod. And the last poem I'm going to read is a poem called Ascension. 1983, first bought artwork. Decades later, the picture still hangs above our bed. Two salmon swim in tandem with noses tilted, suggesting their return upriver. Two small beings, side by side. They shimmer blue-green, their scales reflecting sunlight underwater. I think of us, wildly young, believing in buoyancy, that love would protect us from God knows what, the fight against the current, our do-or-die devotion. Reeling now when I consider the years, the battering that we've survived. Look, every fall, bodies of salmon litter the riverbed after their passage. At night, I dream of fish scales in sunlight, the glory of a lived life. Water over rock. I did it. I'm swimming. I hear nothing but the roar of the river in my ears. Thank you. So, I need to tell you how this is going to work. Gwen is next. Come on up, Gwen. And I'm going to read who's next, and I'm going to read who's on deck. So Gwen is next, and Meg is on deck. Meg, the lady, is on deck.
I'm Gwen Mansfield, and if you've never heard spoken word poetry, I hope I don't scare you. Ukraine, Marguerite, and the shell through the roof of the Bucha Chapel, Part 1. 9 times I crossed the water, 5,469 miles to Kyiv, but it's never 5,469 miles to Kyiv, because planes go up and down and down and up in Austria or Amsterdam or London or in between to make the leap to Boryspil Airport. Met by soldiers in camel green AK-47s swung across their shoulders or M15 pressed tight against their chest and faces unable to smile. I was not a threat. I brought my instructions with me. Eyes straight ahead, do not smile, do not talk unless addressed, no sudden movement, and above all, no jokes. 9 times I crossed the water, never as a savior or as a white interloper, as a fix-it woman with a passion for causes, never as a critic of culture. I went as a lover of humanity, of culture, of children, of the abandoned. I went because of ignorance, seeking revelation, hoping for wisdom and wonder, and a world where 5,469 miles made no difference at all when friendship called, and as an intervention to preconceived ideas. Through Kyiv I went, and all around the language indistinguishable, Ya Tibet Kohayu, Budlaska, and then it was on to Bucha, dear Bucha. And even now I smell the odors of contradiction in the town, the burning garbage as is the custom in many nations, and the sweet fresh cut flowers of the market, raw meat hanging openly, the butcher waiting to cut a slab in exchange for a rivna or two. The smell of wool being ready for customers' designation of scarf or sweater or hat. Those are the thoughts that filter through the chaos of now. The chaos clutters up my memory, circles round my Polaroid pictures from the past. February 27th, 2022, the butcher of Bucha, Putin's veteran soldier, made his plans, rolled into town with genocide tactics and mass murder checklists, bombed and burned the flats, the schools, the markets, the people, leveled it all, rubble, mocking the dissected, snickering at fallen babies without mothers, offering ironic chuckles at the referendum of 1991. Streets demolished, dented metal tanks, scrunched with the anger of war, things unspeakable crushed inside, and whispering through the hollow streets came the national salute, faintly at first. Glory to Ukraine. And I've been taught those words of sovereignty are not to come without an answer, a verbal answer, must have a response, a retort is required. I've learned what to say. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. And there are many. There are all ages, men and women, sons and daughters, fathers and mothers. They all took up arms, barely enough time to learn how to carry a weapon, aim it, fire it, kill with it. The butcher of Bucha, beat back by the end of March, thrown out of where he dared demolish, drunken with the blood of innocents. Yet by May, the citizens of restoration, my heroes, filled the streets, reclaiming, repurposing, reconstructing, redeeming. The war cry, glory to Ukraine, still reverberates. The answer, glory to the heroes, still echoes in return. And that indistinguishable language I heard on the streets of Kyiv years ago, I learned a few words after 9 trips across the water, 49,221 miles. Budlaska, please, please, can we find an end to this in 2023? And most importantly, Ya Tibet Kuhayo, I love you. Ya Tibet Kuhayo, Ukraine. Ya Tibet Kuhayo.
And then Amanda, you're on deck.
This piece is called Drug of Choice. Drug of choice. I know I should let it go. People don't want to hear about it anymore. The way I'm sucking on grief like one of those sickeningly sweet lollipops, the ones that Aunt Maggie would buy for us from the fancy candy store in Memphis. A kaleidoscope of colors wending their way to the very center of the universe. The store was called Den Stools. In we would walk through the front door and off the noisy street. So many little girls in tow, and great Aunt Maggie having only 2 hands to hold. I and my sister Frankie, she was older but small. We usually each got a hand to hold. Den Stools, the late 1960s, Memphis, Tennessee. The smell of fine chocolate did not lend its vocabulary to me yet. Instead, it tickled my senses, made me feel the touch of light summer cotton on my skin as goosebumps of excitement rose up to meet it. A hand-me-down dress, no doubt, 8th of 9 children, next to the baby, 5th of 6 little girls. Those were my names. That's what the grown-ups called me. I can't tell you the nickname that my siblings used for me. I still don't like it. It makes me bristle. I was walking into the candy store, It was walking into the candy store that taught me about another kind of feeling, the sweetness that life had to offer, not bristling from embarrassment or banishment from the brood. The electrifying feeling of chocolate fumes was foreign to me until I drifted into a cloud of it at Den Stools, holding on to my great Aunt Maggie's hand. Orange rinds covered in crystallized sugar, banana chips dried and dancing on a foil sheet, strawberries still wearing their green stems and dressed in a plaster cast of chocolate, pecan balls filled with tacky dough and the nuts clinging tightly to it. They looked restless behind the counter there. Wouldn't those pecan balls rather be bouncing off the walls? Licorice strings long enough to tie your little girl's shoes, animal-shaped marzipan creatures that I really didn't like. Animals with little black dot eyes, but a taste that only silly grown-ups could enjoy. On top of the thick glass showcase, there were raspberry liqueur-filled dark chocolates that would become my drug of choice. Decades later, when the cloud of chocolate fumes dispersed and gave way to a path out of my own torment, I learned instead to walk on the very ground of sugar, ice cream cool and creamy enough to soothe my ragged nerves. Life in that huge family of mine, in those times of racially toxic tectonic plates shifting under my own driveway, felt like I could not get safely home. Home itself was not safe. Convenient store-bought candy, brightly colored and cheaply made, was taboo inside the walls of our unsweetened home, therefore all the more delicious. Cookies of all kinds, candied apples, thick slabs of coffee cake before I knew coffee was a drink. These were the things that I craved. Drug of choice, sugar. Lift me up, knock me out. Change my brainwaves from worry to wonder. Stir some malted milk-flavored powder into my slowly melting vanilla ice cream, around and around with a silver spoon in the little teal-colored bowl that I could reach from my tiptoes in the kitchen in that home. And off I go, out of my mind. That was 1 minute ravaged with fear and then plunged into a pool of cool candy colors and calm. How am I on time? Thank you.
Amanda and Diane is on deck.
Hello, I'm Amanda Williamson, and I'm going to read a poem about my cat. This poem is called Hang On a Little Bit Longer, Honey, and I dedicate it to my cat, Petra. Shortly after we are married, my husband gets me to say that if he and my cat were dangling from a cliff, and I could only save one, that I would save him. We are in bed when I say this. I know, already you can see where this is going. He's been asking me for some time, and when we were engaged, I always said the cat, but now I say, I would save you, honey. He's curled up behind me, his knees to my thighs, the smooth tops of his feet pressed to the bottoms of mine. He has nice feet. I would save you, I say, and he pulls me in tight to his chest, and I pull the cat to mine. Now, you have to understand that this cat and I go way back. I'm talking about hamburger helper when I couldn't afford the hamburger, and an apartment where a bat flew into the bathroom one time. But that's another poem. What I want to say here is that the cat burrows under the covers, turning in her usual circles, and lifts her pink nose to mine. She weighs 14 pounds. Most of that was put there by me and by mayonnaise, but I never mention that to the vet because she really likes it. Don't judge. I kiss my cat's cool ears and smell her head, and she thrums hard against my chest. Cats do this, you know, to heal one another. I saw it on a nature show. In a colony, they gather around the downed one and purr it back to life, or into the next. It's a good send-off. So I ask you, what doesn't this cat know of love? She is patient and solid as a bowling ball, and she looks at me in green certainty, like she would at the cliff if her clipped claws were slipping on the rock. Thanks.
Diane is up, and then Lauren is on deck.
This is just so nice to be here. Thank you, Michele. I have really missed the old Paul's Bohemia poetry nights that happened before COVID. Then COVID came along. My first poem is where I often walk on a park in Paulsbo, and my favorite tree. I call it Fish Park. Multiple trunks of an ageless cedar look down on creek and blackberry, dividing like octuplets. They keep each other company. Through winter snow, prolific budding of spring, white heat of summer, gold and red of fall, they discuss the hikers passing by and wonder why they move so fast. Why not stop and feel the stillness, smell the fragrance of their boughs, older than any visitor. They have stories to tell that are never heard. My mother was in a bridge club for the last 25 years of her life, and I think of her with this poem. It's called Spades and Hearts. I see her in the kitchen cutting bread shapes with cookie cutters, shaped like card, suits, clubs, diamonds, spades, and hearts. Her bridge club meets weekly. These domestic matrons of the 50s, bound together in servitude, in the search for perfection. Their homes, a citadel of soap and wax, the reassuring smell of pot roast on Sunday. Their lives, a testimony to ambition held captive in denial. The one weekly indulgent to gather with finger sandwiches and tea, to rise to the competitive challenge of clubs, diamonds, spades, and hearts. My last poem. I just like to have fun once in a while. And this is a rhymer. And for those of us of an age, I call it maintenance. At this time of life, indignities reign. Sometimes I think they hurt more than pain. There is one thing I ask right along. Please don't you let me die on the John. CPAP and hearing aids, a blood pressure cuff, then arthritis and heart pills. 6 more, that's enough. Salve for my foot rash, more for my knees. My hands are not working, have trouble with keys. And thinking it over, my wish is not long. Just please don't you let me die on the job.
You speak for us all. Lauren and then Lisa.
Within their grace. On a stunning early November day, leaning out across a wheelbarrow filled with trimmings from a rambunctious climbing rose, I open the latch on the broad, tall gate. As everything in our world has its own particular song, this metal latch song is one I know well, and so do they. As everything in our, all 3 of us are blissfully in our own worlds. A late fall sun slips below the treetops. The temperature drops dramatically. I find myself finishing up the day, close to dusk. Gently, I push the nose of the old, hard-working wheelbarrow against the gate, open it just enough to roll through, stop for a moment to catch the gate, securely close it on my way out. All this, without fully setting down my load, is kind of a wheelbarrow ballet I've perfected over this year. Sprawling mounds of yard waste piled just outside this fertile garden, surrounded by a tall, secure fence intended to keep out our 4-legged deer neighbors. They've developed quite an appetite for the delicious beauties who live within the protection of the fence. We see each other at the exact same moment. 20 feet away, a mama and her fawn born this spring. Elated to see them, I freeze so as not to spook them. They take half a step toward bolting. I remain still. They do too. A broad, deep smile fills me. I am absolutely overjoyed to see them. We only cross paths on this particular late afternoon because I finished my work much closer to the hours they deem safe to come out. With a busy road on one side of the garden, it's surreal to hear the incessant going home from work cacophony. as we stand in utter stillness, this small family, only feet from me. They venture out of the deep woods and closer to the road just in case the gate is open or perhaps to munch fresh garden clippings. These beautiful ones have learned to stay far out of sight during daylight hours. We three continue to gaze each other. I still haven't moved, and neither have they. A few more moments, and the little one begins to explore, looks at her mama first. Is it safe? Mama begins to eat, holds her gaze on me. After a seeming eternity and still keeping me in their view, they begin to chew on delicious discarded plants. Too many inside the garden, they grow again, just outside the fence. I speak silently, send my words out from the center of my chest. What a blessing to see your face, to feel your breath, you who call these woods your home, you and your indescribable beauty. After holy time passes, Mama looks at the young one. They both look back at me. In the most majestic of magical postures, they take one, then two silent steps and completely disappear back into the woods. When I am certain they've inserted themselves far into their deep sanctuary, I bow to them, dump my load, make my way into the now deepening dusk, carrying some of their majesty.
Lisa? How are we doing? Everybody good? Now, I have a question for the group. You guys want to take a break or just keep hearing fabulous poetry?
Keep hearing.
Okay. That means after Lisa, Tamara's on deck.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Ashley. This poem is titled, A Long Time Ago, There Was and There Wasn't. The title is often the opening line of Armenian folktales, and this poem is dedicated to my Armenian grandmother, who escaped the genocide and survived here in the US. A long time ago, there was and there wasn't. She crouched behind the wine barrel, doors crash, her mother's screams, pounding Turkish boots crack pots. Small brown bird flies up into desert air. She vanished into silence, shuddered like a shroud, cloaked in hunger without tears, wind blowing through her eyes. Tipped and slid in the boat, in the dark, rumbled for days, like an ancient rock slide on Ararat, tumbled one day into new exile. Boundless noise pitched over her, sounds marched out of open mouths. Dry as dust, this language she would live in for 79 years, never learn, never speak. Lost in her new home wilderness, killing the memory of the killing, she forgot how the story went. This next one is called What Cracks Open. What cracks open? The scalpel cuts, splits open the skin. The heart muscle first stills, then opens to the blade. Rock fractures when dynamite blows. The mountain pass opens, shards crash down. The pointed garden spade cracks the ice so robins, home too soon, can drink. The sun splinters clouds. Beams warm the surface for the buffleheads floating there on winter mornings. The seed wrestles against cold earth. Nanoscopic movements rupture the husk. The tiny white shoots emerge and green up. Tell me, do you need to crack open? I once thought everyone would be better off if they let their pain break them down, if they let the pain of others bring them to compassion. I thought this was the way humans connected. What did I know? In these late years, I know what intimacy can be. I know how the lichen need the rocks, the trees, all the cracks in the pottery. I see now how we run so hard to escape the avalanche. And then my last one is a short poem, and it's called Quiche, a love poem. Do you want the quiche, he asks? The leftover piece from Easter brunch, creamy with Swiss cheese, the savory bacon and sweet onions. Excellent flaky crust this time. I say, yes, that would be good. Later, I understood. I had taken something from him, his generous offering to my desire. It would have tasted better in his mouth. Thank you.
Tamara is up and Piper is on deck.
Thank you, Michele. I'm so excited.
Hours, days, and minutes I have pressed near and against your lips, tasted the every of your tasting, and I wouldn't take it back. I never tire of your in and out, the proof and wonder of your life. The closer I am to your sounds and wetness, the more useful and powerful I become. Just to be near you incites a fury of needing. Without your strong, knowing hands positioning me just so, I am as blank as plain paper. When you grab me, thrust me to your mouth, inhale my every fiber, and flaunt me like the latest fashion, I am remarkable. Let me open doors for you. Let me be your all-access pass to pleasure. Let me protect you. After that, I'll say that is a poem written early in the pandemic from the perspective of a mask. She lights fires underwater, illuminating the memories held there. Their burn brightens a path through pasts and presents. We are all recycled. Recreations, reinventions, rememberings. Our bodies house oceans of tale and story, tears and triumphs. We glide along shiny surface, kick, stroke, and play in the meaty middle, dive deep, deep down into the unnamed, unseen, and unknown, where color, certainty, and context cease to shape and seal our beliefs. The undoing of our loneliness reveals our greatest strength. Lies not only in the fierce grip of our fists, but in the empty palms of our open hands. Squeeze one more. Change my mind. Feels saucy. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been too long since my last confession. I've been holding in heaps. That ends now. I'm yanking the nails from my hands and feet with sheer will. Like a miracle, I will rise and heal. I am done carrying the weight. I release the burden of judgment, cruelty, punishment, mistakes, and fear. No longer here to subscribe to the shame. I am unearthing the genius of my uniqueness, throwing my creations up into the air like confetti. No longer concerned with their landings, let them make us snow and fall. Shape them however you like, freeze them, let them melt. I am not their keeper, and you are not mine. Keeping is an untruth. Energy flows, bends, and bounds. It is not meant to be contained. reset the knowing. Open hands stretch for somewhere in the air where they can feel without touching. This life is a sensory circus of pleasure and pains. Sometimes the two are the same. Penance is a bullshit peace offering to which I will not succumb. My God exalts me, details, flaws, and all.
Woohoo!
This is so much fun. Piper, and then Al is on deck.
Alright, I'm Piper and I'm very excited to be here with all these other people. And all of a sudden I really need to pee. What's that about? Alright, I have 2 poems today. The first one is called A Ballad for My Dreams. Longing for a song or a ballad of sorts, for they hoard, they want more, keep the songs to themselves. I simply want rivers and apples that thump on the ground, that laps with the river and sits with the sound, and stumps me, sickly sweet, hums to me, a tweet, tweet, tweet. They see what I mean, the shifting of light in the open, parawhite. A rift forms storms that keeps me away, seeks to take my dream and my means. It's cruel. See what I mean? And this one's called Baker as the Ram. Baker is in an awkward phase of life, not yet ready to retire, but with no children to tire her. She tried to keep them, but like water in gangly fingers, they slipped away all too quickly. Baker has a round and rosy face. Hair was reddish-brown and rather plain. People may judge her, but wouldn't ever hurt her, because she wouldn't hurt them. Baker senses she is just a working part in the world, a gear that turns and turns, and that's really quite all right. Baker often dreams that she is a little frog in a huge rainforest, where she only dwells in a pool of water contained to a leaf. Tigers have a tea party beneath. She knows, but chooses to remain oblivious. Yet tonight, as she slips off in a bed that's always been too soft and too big for her liking, she is a ram. Winds tear at grassy plains, do not ruffle Baker. She leads a pack, bugs and birds sit on her back, a crown of twisted bone atop her head. She wakes at a barely godly hour, groans and stretches. Something has changed. She is no longer small, but large as well. Insignificance humbled her, humbled and enlarged, saddened and empowered. Baker, oh Baker, does the dream fade?
Al, and then Nancy is on deck.
As an old actor moving swiftly into geezerhood, I find that putting a full-size script into my head becomes harder and harder with each year. So I've gone into recreating old-time radio. Everybody remember radio? It's that thing that had that dial that went when you got the real good tuning. So I'm hoping to present just a little bit of that. This is going to be a commercial because I worked with the Jewel Box Theater in Paulsbo. In the last 2 weeks in April, you will have the opportunity of taking in old-time radio. So put it on your calendars. Anyway, this is called Same Time, Same Station. Now, some of these names may elude you. If they do, that means you're young. Will Nero Wolfe meet old Miss Brooks at Grand Central Station? Will Corliss Archer, Archie too, at Duffy's Tavern quaff a few? The Shadow and the Whistler know the evil in the hearts of men. And I love old-time radio. Imagination rides again.
to go with.
So this poem came about from a class from Amanda Williamson, the cat person here. She has an amazing poetry class through the Senior Center on Fridays at noon, and I encourage all of you to join us.
I
It's
told
really
Nancy
fun.
not to say that. It's nice, we should have.
So she said, take somebody that you esteem, living or dead, and a situation that bothers you. A difficult situation, marry them up. So, dear Elbert, please accept our plea for your help to purge the planet of plastic and general cleanup. As you know, we approach another century of bonding chemicals that don't decompose. With your interest in time, we're hoping you'll help us unwind our dependence on all things disposable. Since you found a fourth dimension, perhaps you could come up with another to be used as a dumping ground for junk that is clogging our oceans and crowding cities. We'd rather the refuse be hidden, so if not a new dimension, maybe a wormhole. Or would that be the same thing? Do you see why your expertise is needed? In the process, we could double down on E equals MC squared to create clean energy by shipping our mass very fast. Also, we would be much obliged if you'd lend your good name to help bid adieu to DuPont and its ilk, as we don't want to keep filling up space with our PFOs, PFAs, etc. Our team will reconvene as soon as you can get here. Sincerely, Clean Up Planet Earth Committee.
Adam, and then David's on deck.
Thank you for having us evening. And something you said made me think of something, because that always is true, which is what's so nice about being here. I write more about stuff outside of me than inside of me, and this is about jazz. And there's a wonderful nonprofit on the island, Beef Presents, that puts on amazing jazz music at Golden Bay Hall. I was at a show this past weekend by the Thomas Marriott Quartet. Jazz. Have you ever sat, wondered in awed tranquility as each burnished brass beat the phrasing, incantations, and coded moments' melodic meaning was backed by catechisms? Soft brushed or slapped by fanned wood had propelled the rise and fall of thin crescent percussivities, clatter scattering into perfect bass-plucked, metal-wrapped, resonant Swahili gray head bowed with memories of 64 improvisational exercises became the precision of gesture, mentioned, smiled, and foot-tapped. While listening only on the edge of understanding, while the intricacies of intersection of memory, light, reflection, sleep, dream, sound, vibration, perception, conscious desire gave way to a complex singularity in which creation and execution coexist, the way that shadows move, the way that rain fountain bounces, the way that sleep is a kind of forgiveness. There is a certainty, entertained and then evaporated, and then the thread is lost until the final revelation that there is no need for words. The thirst for water, for the flowing of time, can be slaked by the blown, slapped, pounded, fingered, strummed, snapped, muffled, bowed notes of jazz. It's a piece. And then, another piece, thank you. So, this is about a conflict before the other conflict. Before the other. I don't know anything about deserts. The shifting sands, the long, slow erosion of hot wind. The way that heat, which mirage-born, curling air into rising visible currents, becomes so suddenly invisible, replaced by starlight cold. I don't know anything about ancient languages spoken, whose sound is the winds, the heat, the movement of rock to build walls with shelters, doorways. I have not learned anything about the people who know the secrets of water and time, wrapping themselves in loose layers of linen to drink tea, tell stories, pray. I have not been taught, so I do not know and cannot know, so cannot speak. I do not speak about the desert, or cultures, or customs, or foods, or arts. But fear I have felt, that I can imagine, that I can see. In running feet and bodies clinging to flying metal machines, can hear in gunfire, can hear in silence. It is palpable in the waiting, fear and grief and betrayal and anger. They are not sands or wind or heat which becomes cold. They are not matters of opinion, pontificated with pointed finger, with selective harvest of numbers, dates, events. So while I do not know and I cannot speak, I can feel and I must feel. I have no choice. Do you?
David Heckler, and then I'll close this out.
Age is setting in on me. But I keep writing poetry. This is a new manuscript, poems, that I'm working on with my editor, publisher. And I just thought I would come and read a poem or two from the book. I won't read it. Well, at the beginning, he wrote about this collection. Most poets have aspirations and dreams that influence their writing of poems according to quotations I read in familiar quotations edited by John Bartlett and in Writer's Dreaming by editor Naomi Epple. I had dreams about favorite writers and traveled to places where they lived and wrote. In America, I visited New York, Massachusetts, Florida, Mississippi, California, Oregon, and Washington. The foreign countries I visited were Canada, Mexico, France, Italy, Austria, Germany, and then Chile, Ireland, Wales, England, Russia, and Greece. I won't read any poems about some of the poets that I encountered, like Pablo Neruda in Chile. My wife and I were there for a couple of weeks and went into the house to see it and all of that. I also wrote poems about my dreams and aspirations to climb mountains, visit animals in their natural setting, explore political ideas, and pursue listening to voices of writers I've acknowledged as muses for my writing. For added inspiration, I set up a wall of photographs of writers in my den to my writing desk, printer, and computer. They're all over the wall. Now, I will say read a couple. Shorter ones. I won't get into capitalism and read 2 pages on. This one is entitled Way of Life or Love. And I have a quote from Robert Frost. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Down the hillside near the swirling waters of a rising tide, Eli lights a fire by his workshop. He burns chunks of wood and shavings from cedar planks and oak beams. As he warms his hand, he looks up at an empty cottage. His wife, Elna, wants a car, but he already has a small rowboat with outboard motor. Grocery stores, Sears and Roomba, clinic and post office were all within walking distance of a public dock where they could tie up. Eli looks up and smiles at his double-ended, half-finished hull, a 32-foot ketch. He rubs his hands down one oak rib, turns and lifts a beam onto a set of sawhorses, looks at pencil marks, and reaches for a long blade saw. Incidentally, this boat was being built by Tom Roop, a professor at Columbia College in Bremerton, a colleague of mine. Oh, here's my wall of writers. I'm not going to be that one here. Think we get this confused? It's my wall of writers. Here's one about my wife, my wild prairie rose.
Yeah, let's hear it.
And my wild prairie rose. Once a carpet dealer in Istanbul offered me 200 camels for you. An inheritor of trading savvy since the Silk Road days, he saw what I knew of your value. Where does your joy come from? You flip open the cell phone, greet your caller, break into laughter with eyes sparkling, dance through questions and answers. Where does your courage come from? You married me, a college student of 20. Gave birth to our son and daughter. Taught feisty pupils for years in 3 states. Cruised with your amateur captain to Desolation Sound. Snorkeled in Maui. Biked the STP. Hiked into the Valley of Silent Men. Traveled with your guide to Granada, Rome, Berlin, toured to Zion, Alexandria, St. Petersburg, and Cartagena. A farmer's daughter, the 8th and last child, born on the sand hills of North Dakota, in a 4-season climate of spring rains, summer heat, long cool autumns, and longer winters with howling winds, blizzards, and sub-zero weather. In a culture of prescribed chores, milking cows, plucking eggs from hens, doing dishes for combining crews in close view of nature, a bull with heifers in pasture, cows calving in barns, hissing geese in the farmyard, and coyotes howling in the night. You learned what was real, what it is to work, how to survive with your share, and to receive and return love. No dream could offer more. Here's one literary day. Oh, here's one. Abamal's for traveling Iceland's circle. We've done it. We've traveled Iceland's circle. Oh. I don't know about this one. It's called Marriage Road. We've traveled the road of marriage for 50 years with quite a few bumps along the way. Sometimes the road was gravel, sometimes paved, and at times, like the Autobahn carrying us at high speed into the unknown. Now in our 70s, we no longer travel any road. We walk in public parks and along suburban sidewalks, rarely encountering bumps in our travels. We do dream about the old days of zooming along, but we put those dreams aside as no longer applicable to our lives. I mean, I can't, I've got one here. This, I'll get them. Well, here's the wisdom. Oh, my sister. Here's solo guitar. Ooh. Here's the first thread and the root of life. I won't do that. Oh, here's one about Elizabeth Bishop. No. Here's ode to W. D. Yeats. I don't know what you did. Huh? I'm done. And then, when I come next week, I'm going to bring my own chair, because I need a chair with arms to push myself up. I had a hip replacement on one side, and another one is due short. As long as I can keep writing, I don't care. Thank you for including me, but I'm not going to sit down here. I need my book.
What a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful evening. My heart is just overflowing. I'm so grateful for every one of you for being here. What a great send-off. I'm so excited about the poetry that's coming down the pike. See you all next month. We have some snacks and books for sale of Kathryn's books, and we have some books over there. I think I have my books over there too. And thank you very, very much for coming. And keep writing, poets keep showing up, poetry lovers keep coming back, and thank you again.